Buckle up, fuckleheads, and welcome back to the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. It's our exit survey episode on Succession's final season. Although I suspect this might not be the final time we'll talk about Succession on this podcast.
Ain't no way.
Yeah. And joining me once again to break it all down and answer your questions, it's my other half of the incredible fuck brother bandwagon. It's Ebube. Ebube, how are you
What
doing?
up, prick licks?
Well done. Well done that you had that ready to go.
What can I say? It just came to me.
The first line we ever heard of Roman Roy, man. So apparently, I think they shot him entering the bar where he gets the martini. And he says, I think he says, "What up, motherfuckers," or something like that, which is obviously a reference to his first line, but obviously that scene was cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. How you doing? Ready to get into questions?
Yes. I would just like to appreciate everybody who sent questions. It's so nice that everybody loves this show, and we have so many people who really care about what's going on, and especially the people on YouTube with their comments. Some of them really give me things to think about sometimes. but yeah, let's definitely get into it. We have quite a lot to cover, and hopefully we can come up with some kind of situation where we're all equally confused.
Well, not me, because I'm smarter than everybody else, and I don't think I'm confused. Anyway, but yeah,
say so.
as we said, shout out to all the YouTube commenters, everyone. Some really, really smart and insightful comments on our YouTube episodes, especially the last two, episodes 9 and 10. Yeah, and also just thank you to everyone who's interacted with our episodes on Twitter, especially. Hopefully we can answer some of your questions. Before we go any further, I should mention that Ebube is apparently on an episode of Friends. So his smoke detector might go off at a point this episode or random points during this episode. So yeah, just a forewarning.
Perhaps, maybe we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we can escape that.
Yeah, and we had an episode with a Ted Lasso producer a few days ago. It's on the feed now. Adam Chip Hamilton was nice enough, and we were the lucky ones.
We were lucky to have Adam Chip
I got
Hamilton
my whole compliments there mixed
in our
up.
midst.
Yeah, he you guys might know him as being the first name you see when an episode ends. He came on to talk about making the show, the journey of the show, what the show has meant to him. It was a very, very nice conversation and very, very heartwarming at points. So please check that out. I also spoke with my friend Lewis Evans, who plays one of the football players on AFC Richmond, just about final shooting of the show.
He's the guy who kisses someone at the end.
He is the guy who kisses someone at the end. Yeah. And inspires Colin to do the same. In case you don't know, which is I don't know how you listen to this episode and you don't know, but we've had a full season discussion of Succession, right? Every episode, all 10 episodes are out on the feed. You can listen to them. We also have full season discussions on Barry, on Yellow Jackets, on Ted Lasso. It's been a very busy 3 months, so please check all of that out. We also covered Rain Dogs, Love and Death, The Mandalorian. So if any of those shows mean anything to you, you can check out our feed for those episodes and redo the journey with us. So what we're going to do, as obviously we mentioned, we asked you guys to send in some questions on our finale episode. We are going to, first of all, just touch on some things that I have personally had lots of interactions about, like 3 main points regarding the finale. Then we'll go into specific questions that Ebube and myself received. And then we'll probably just share some of our final thoughts and just maybe talk about some of the characters and where this show kind of left them. Before we start, so there's an article that Jesse Armstrong wrote for The Guardian. Actually, I think it's an extract from something else he wrote, but it's on The Guardian. You can check that out. It's kind of like a piece on the early stages of development of the show, what inspired him to write the show. And I think a good point there was when he basically said that the show was a response, if not directly or indirectly, to both Brexit in the UK and the Trump presidency, kind of how years of anti-EU rhetoric in the British press led to Brexit, or how America's right-wing journalism was basically priming the audience for the arrival of Trump. So you can obviously see why that kind of influence will lead to...
It also helps that he's maybe the most well-versed person in writing political comedy that we can think of.
Well,
he's just very experienced in that.
He's definitely very... I mean,
Veep Show.
I would have said Enuchi before this, but yeah, probably with Succession now, he probably just... I mean, Enuchi is still his mentor, but yeah, he has more more under his wing of that. But there's a section I just want to quickly read it out where he meant where I kept on saying I was going to highlight this and talk about this, but then the quotes kept on getting longer and longer. So please bear with me. It's from the Guardian piece. He says, "It was politically alarming and creatively appealing to imagine the mixture of business imperatives and political instinct that exist within a media operation. To consider what happens when something as important as the flow of information in a democracy hits the reductive brutality of the profit calculation inside such a company. How those elements might rebound emotionally and psychologically inside a family as it considered the question of corporate succession." Basically, that just says it was interesting to see how journalism clashes with capitalism, and what does that do with people that are meant to be taking over. That's the long
Wow,
story
so
short.
eloquently worded. My
Yeah,
goodness.
just like, I mean, he wrote Succession. It's not hard to understand that, but yeah, that's like, just you can see why that kind of kernel of idea would just keep on growing in his head. Apparently, he first had like the first ideas of this in 2008, which was a very different thing. That was like more of almost a documentary on the Murdochs.
Uh
Um,
huh.
okay, so I'm going to start with a few things that I've been having a lot of discuss about in the past week or so. First of all, ABB, are you finally ready to accept that Roman was not lying, that all that was true? So, like, you were
Are you
the
gonna hit me with that right from the jump?
yeah. It's just
I
I
think
didn't tell you I was
I'm
going to do that.
I'm the final holdout. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
last guy who still hasn't accepted. And it's funny. Right before we started doing this, started this recording, I was really thinking about it. I was like, "Am I ready to accept this?" I feel like my answer is still no. However, I'm finding less and less ways to deny it.
I don't know. Like, you're literally the
the
only man on this island. I just hope the island is not too big. Like, what are you like? Nobody else. So obviously, during the episode, my first instinct when I watched the episode was like we're
Oh,
talking
man.
about like from a previous relationship. Then when we're talking, I thought maybe it was cheating. I didn't even consider IVF, if I'm being honest. And then
Yeah,
I came out of the episode and somebody was like, before we even recorded before we even put out the episode, after we recorded, someone was like, "Oh, so did Rava do IVF?" I was like, "Oh, that's kind of what it meant." And it made sense because Roman was like a cabinet, what did he say?
he said is a
Filing
Rava
cabinet
half Rava
person.
half filing cabinet guy.
Yeah, so which
Yeah,
kind of makes sense because that's how they would store the sperm, isn't it? So I was like, "Oh, that's kind of what it means." And then you have things like somebody on our YouTube, I apologize, I should have written out their handle, but they mentioned how Logan says to Tom in the Ball on the Floor episode, like, "Why don't you talk to me when you can give me a grandchild? Or are you shooting blanks?" Which is obviously
yeah.
now that means like,
That's
okay.
something that was actually on his mind.
And you can also understand that he's probably been questioning Kendall's sexuality. If someone like Logan, that would be a big deal. Because remember in the dinner in Italy, he says, wait, is that it? Were you chasing a bit of tail? Are you, I can't remember what word he used. I don't know if he's homosexual or gay, but he kind of says, are you gay? So yeah, and
Yeah,
the person that first said IVF to me, shout out Asha, he was like, that just kind of changes the entire character of Kendall in a way, which is like it makes him a lot more pathetic. Not that like being impotent is a problem, but just like he seems to be, you can understand why he was exerting so much or trying to exert so much dominance in other
are
fields.
you trying to are you trying to explain overcompensation?
Y- yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have the pen of Jesse Armstrong to be so eloquent. But yeah, you can understand why he felt like he needed to be so good to Logan because he felt like, oh, because Logan would have definitely made him feel like he had disappointed by not having a quote unquote natural child. Logan's words, not mine. Um, but yeah, so
Okay.
like it just makes a lot of things like, oh wow, this child, this boy, this child, this man, Kendall Roy was just like he really just did not he didn't stand a chance. So I don't know, keep on fighting that fight. I have seen interviews with both Kendall and so Kendall, Jesus Christ, the lines are blurring with both Jeremy Strong and even Jesse Armstrong, where even Mark Mardon actually nobody seems to be denying that this is true. So
I
I mean,
know.
fight
I
your
listen to
fight.
all the things, and I'm just like, wow, is none of you gonna side with me?
No, they're not.
I spent a
Fight.
whole season defending this man's kids.
Well, they're still his kids.
I
They're
still
just
defend them. By the way, they're still
yeah,
his kids.
exactly. He adopted them. He should take better care of them. Um. Okay, so the other thing I've really had, speaking of Roman and Kendall, I've really had a lot of discussions about is that hug between them, and I think one of your questions asked basically why did I think was why did I go so quick to say it was an abusive reaction, abusive action, and I've listened to both Jeremy Strong and Mark Milo talk about this scene in particular, and my interpretation is that I still think it's still violent and abusive. I don't think you can look at that without seeing some sort of violence and abuse there, right? Because that hug grows. It grows from a hug, which Roman thinks is going into like a normal hug, to something quite violent, in
Yeah,
which
it's
you pop
domineering
stitches. Yeah.
in a very it almost suffocating way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think because the person who asked that question is, well, long time listener Chris. The person was essentially like, what makes us believe that this was sort of the penultimate step of Kendall becoming just like Logan? Because I think these final few episodes, final like maybe 2 or 3 episodes, you can kind of see that as Kendall finally being able to do the thing, well, at least one of the things he always wanted, which was to be Logan.
Mm-hmm.
And um, essentially, this was kind of like the final step, so to speak, or the second to the last step, one of the final
Mm-hmm.
steps. And the question really is like, what makes us think that that's the case? What was the power play here for it to be categorized as
Mm-hmm.
abuse? So I think what this person wants us to answer is essentially, how does this relate to their dynamic and how is this a show of force? So I guess you can go ahead with that.
Yeah. So I mean, I still think it's unlike you. I haven't had the cast and creators come out and disprove my theory. So I still I still think there's force, there's violence. I think that's undeniable. But I think what I found out from lots of, especially Mac Milo seems to have a lot more positive spin on this scene actually. And it's almost like, how do I put it? So I think maybe now maybe it's not that penultimate step like I thought towards Logan, because it's a lot less harsh than I thought. But I think I wrote it down what Milo said in an interview. So obviously he expressed that this is just his opinion, subjective opinion. But it says the hug is a relief. It's a loving gesture. It's brutal and self-serving, but it's a loving gesture. And I think the interpretation of both Jeremy Strong and Mark Milo, from what I've read, is that he's doing something to help Roman. He's kind of helping Roman to see that like he almost like if Roman can see those
Remove his
stitches
disillusionment,
pop.
so to speak.
Yeah, yes. If he can see those stitches, he can accept that it wasn't meant to be him. He doesn't look the part. And so I think I always had that as the end goal. It was obviously to make Roman feel like he's not fit enough to be CEO. But my journey is different from Milo and Jeremy Strong. They are more like it's a brotherly act. It's still a violent brotherly act. Like
Yeah.
let's not misinterpret that. It's still an abusive, violent brotherly act. But I think it's something that like that's their love language, right? That's that family. Their love language is violence and abuse. We talked about the cage last week's episode. And
Hmm.
I think one of our commenters even mentioned that like Roman says teamwork makes the dream work, right? After the hug.
Yeah.
So he knew he was happy is the wrong word, but he understood where he was after the stitches were popped, and he kind of maybe understood
Yeah,
what
the whole thing was supposed to put him in
Kendall's
his place,
actions
right?
were.
I think a
Hmm.
lot of people are saying that it might not really be abuse just because Roman was on board with it. But you have to remember that people who are
Mm,
being abused, like victims,
yeah.
aren't always able to kind of like compartmentalize that. Like part of being a victim is that you've internalized what's going on in a lot of cases. So
Mm,
it could, like the fact that he's, under duress being like, yeah, I guess this is my place in life, doesn't necessarily mean that like, he had control in that situation. Even if we
yeah.
don't categorize it explicitly as abuse, Roman was not in control there. I don't think he had much agency in that particular moment.
Yeah, and I think even the main change that listening to Milo and Jeremy Strong has changed in me is that I don't think, at least now listen to them, I don't think that oh God, the lines are really blurring. I don't think that Kendall was was intending to abuse him. So what they kind of
Yeah.
explained, Kendall thought he was doing the right thing.
Bear
It's
hug of
just
sorts, like a real life bear
exactly
hug. Yeah.
Yeah, it just was just just happening through a violent means. And even regarding Roman, McMillan says in that same quote, he says it's the oh, that word. I can't believe I saw that word and I thought I was still gonna say it. Like I saw that word and I was like, I can do it, and I did say it, and I was like, no, let's stop there. It's the S&M of the moment, because what starts as a hug is still a
Oh
trap
gosh.
once Roman realizes what Kendall is doing. This is
Uh-huh.
McMillan. And he talks about how it's the nihilism that we saw from Roman at the end of episode 9. He goes into the crowd, right? He believes that he deserves that pain. So now he believes that he
I mean,
deserves
he
this
always
pain
acts out
from
when he feels embarrassed in one way or another. Like he
yeah.
just that's just how he responds. One recent example before this, like even before the going into the mob, was when he's talking to Jerry at the tailgate party, and she's clearly not having it. Like she's really not there for his nonsense, which is not
Hmm.
how he thought that would go. And he immediately goes and starts like insulting Connor because he has to lash
Yeah.
out somehow.
And like
Yeah,
the S&M, see, I'm smart there. The S&M and
well
the
done.
nihilism of Roman is well established. Like you think, even I think it was this season in the karaoke scene when Kendall is like, "Are you going to apologize for hitting Roman as a child?" And Roman was like, "Everybody hit me. I was annoying, right?" Or even when Logan actually hit him in the Argestes episode,
Uh huh.
and I think it's the next episode that Logan is like, "Oh,
Did
did
I
I even
even
make
make
contact?"
contact? My
And
goodness.
he's kind of like he's almost excusing like I kind of deserved it, which makes sense. Which makes sense now that he's like, oh, actually, kind of. So yeah, he wants the pain. So I guess my main change in the last week is I don't think, based on reading everything, I don't think maybe Kendall intending to be abusive in that moment. It was just, for lack of a better term, their love
But
language
that is
and how
also
they could
Kendall understanding
express.
how Roman responds,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a lot.
So yeah, I think I don't think whether it's abuse or whether it's violence should be in contention, but like it's maybe it was a lot more, if it can be consensual, it was a lot more consensual than maybe I once read it as. The next thing that I've had discussions about is the big elephant in the room. That's Shiv's betrayal. I think I've gone back to watch certain scenes of this episode, and I never, like I said on the episode, I never, which was weird because normally something like that you like kind of push back when you're doing an instant reaction, like, oh, this doesn't make sense. But to me, it always made sense. Shiv's betrayal always made sense,
It's
like
almost
for the
inevitable at
character.
this point because you can kind of
Yeah.
see that she was never truly on board, and she's always
Hmm.
been the one that's found it most difficult to be on board. Um, Connor's disengaged. Roman is not necessarily weak-willed, but let's just say malleable. And Shiv
Hmm.
was always the real opposition. All serious conversations about who it's going to be in the show over the seasons have been between Shiv and Kendall. I remember a scene in season 2 where he's crying on her shoulder and he's saying it's not going to be me. So like when it becomes, he's like, it's not going to be me. So when it's you, please take care of me
Take
because
care of me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because if I wasn't useful to dad right now, I don't know what I'd be for. That's pretty
Yeah.
much exactly how he says
That's
it.
the
And now we're essentially in
end
the
of safe room.
yeah, and we're essentially
Hmm.
now in a situation where she's not technically in control, but she's the most adjacent to control among the three of them, right? So now Kendall would actually need her to take care of him. At least if he's willing to stay in the business, he could probably still have a role in the business, but he probably is not going to want that because it's just too much for him
Oh,
to
I
be around.
mean, I think we should touch on that when we are talking about where the story leaves them.
Yeah.
But I think if you want to, you can track this progression. I think it's not like obviously laid out because this show is patterned than that. But I think it's laid out. First of all, again, we should mention that like once this show is over, there's lots of things from the cast and creators are like theorizing on what they think could have happened. It's not as if it's written in stone. But Mark Milo explained how he thought that, for example, we see Caroline talk to Shiv as they leave, and he's like, he believes that in that moment she's asking her, "Are you okay with this? Are you really okay with this?" Because she expects that she wouldn't be, and then Shiv is like, "Yeah, it's fine." And I think the gut punch of finding out that it's Tom, it's terrible. That annoys her. That's like she's like, "Fuck this, we're gonna kill Martin and Tom," which you can expect because
Uh huh.
the night before she's like, "It's us against them."
Mm-hmm.
Like it's if Martin is gonna fuck me, then we have to get this back. And I think all that tracks. But then the main moment is that moment in Logan's office, right?
Mhm.
When Kendall sits on Logan's chair,
And she's like, "Oh my
and then
god."
he offers non-exec chair to
Stewie.
Stewie. And I was only watching it back literally today that I realized like that's a surprise to Shiv.
Yeah, you can see her
She was like,
face. You can see her face when he says that.
mm-hmm. She was like, we didn't discuss that. You're offering your friend from college a
Which,
chairman
by the
position.
way, is
Okay.
how a lot of their problems
Okay.
in this show started in the first place.
Yeah. And then
Pointing
I
that
think in
out.
that moment, Shiv can see like the body stuff begin to happen. She can see the
Not
like,
even just that, the fact that he's promising
mhm,
connection and collaboration, but is still making unilateral decisions in her face.
yeah. And I think that scene is interesting because that scene never cuts to Roman. It's just Shiv and Kendall
Hmm.
because I think Roman is set. Roman has decided he's fine.
Uh huh.
But also Roman knows that like at the end of the day, like obviously they'll all be fine, but like he'll be fine because it will always be the Roy boys. Like it could always be the Roy boys saying, well, do you think Pinky can dance? Should we invite Shiv in? Like even if Kendall goes all in Jeremy Strong's words, the Mad King, he would always like have something for Roman. So Roman is decided. Roman is
Can I
fine.
just say, I just loved when he made that Game of Thrones reference. Like that guy is amazing
I
to
mean, he
listen
made
to.
two,
He made two, but
and they had the Dracarys one the
yeah,
episode
just
before.
the way
This is on the official podcast, by
listening
the
to
way.
that
You
guy
guys
talk
listen, check
about
that out.
Kendall is actually a treat. I just have to say, like, if
Hmm.
you're listening to
Hmm.
this and you've never done that, please just go do that. It's fun.
I was just like, wow, Jeremy Strong watched Game of Thrones enough to still referencing it all these years. I was like, that's fair
I feel
enough.
like how could he not? Like, I
Um,
feel like he's exactly the type of person who would enjoy Game of Thrones.
you think so?
Yeah, because
Not by his like quote unquote persona. You think that he would like only focus on.
he likes stories about um character exploration and legacy, which is kind of what he's doing in Succession. But like, I think
Mhm.
he's somebody who takes the exploration of personality and characterization very seriously. He likes to do deep dives into the people that he portrays. I think he's just like a very deep person. So he would, I feel like he
Yeah,
would
but he
want to approach
referenced the
on that
final
level.
season of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, well, he did, but which is why he's deep, right? He's looking for the good in it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, just with that Stewie and kind of saying, and then she can basically kind of, I think you mentioned this last week, because she can see that he's becoming Logan, and not in the worst possible ways. Remember last week when he's like last week, the week before, so the funeral episode when he's like, I hope that's in me. The sort of cuts to her and she's like, wait, you do? I thought we just said we hope the poison doesn't drip through. So like you can already see that
She
she's kind of like,
reacted then too.
what are we doing here? And then
Like, this is
obviously
different from what you told me
Kendall,
last night, bro.
yeah, Kendall says that incredible line or series of lines to Stewie when Stewie's like he's very complex and he likes weird drugs and blah blah blah. Let me control
Ah,
myself.
Stewie.
And then Kendall replies, bullshit. You like pancakes and waffles and you kiss guys on Molly. You're not the heart of darkness. You're a grilled cheese with a suck dick. And then he puts his legs on the table and Shiv is like, oh fuck, I can't sign off on this. Can I? Like I cannot give this guy the keys. Like I actually can't give this guy like he's dad, but not nice. Like not in a nice, not nice
But
as in
frat
good, but just
broy,
like
essentially.
yeah,
It's basically
like
what I was saying last week. Like, she realized, like, I have a choice to make here. Like, who is better for me, who is better for the company, and who's better for the
mhm.
country at large. And yeah, these people are all problematic, but I will give Shiv a tiny bit of credit for being the one person in this group who actually cares about the greater good. On some level, she cares about the greater good. Okay, for example, do you remember when they were talking about news and they're like, why do we just do all the news? And Roman's like, that's not how this works, right? And then Shiv,
Yeah,
well, he said, that's not how this works in this country, King Jump Pop.
Kim
but,
Kim Jong Pop, incredible line.
but but Shiv was essentially saying, like, this was on her honeymoon. She was telling Tom, like, okay, we can't just buy Pierce though, because like I need to get my news from somewhere. Like, somewhere needs to actually be
Yeah,
telling the truth. So she has some
no,
concern
I
for
mean,
that, at least on a very small level.
I said it. I think we said this. Yeah, I think we said this during the election episode. I believe that like when it's time, or sometimes when it can be convenient, she does have morals that she can stand on. She has half a leg to stand on, right? The others have nothing.
Yeah.
but like we're splitting hairs at this point. Like we're comparing rotten apples to rotten oranges. Like it's very
Very
like
good.
we're not they're not really. Yeah, she has some morals, but like not anything to write home about. But yeah, but beyond politics, I don't really like. I don't think the greater good of the country is affecting Shiv in this moment, like in the finale, because what she's voting in for Madsen, who is buddy with Mencken. So it's not like she's changing the world. She's not.
Well, Martin is only buddy buddy with Mencken because he feels he needs to be. Martin doesn't really want to answer to anybody.
Yeah, but the start right now. Anyway, but yeah, but that's true because I think we have a question about that we can touch on in a
We do,
second.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the main thing is that in that moment she's like, oh, Frat Bro Kendall is in. He already literally this season he already cut me out, him and Roman. So like, why can't he do it again? And then obviously, like you mentioned during our final episode, in the boardroom meeting, he again shuts her off. He doesn't recognize her contributions to the Madsen deal. So she's just like, yeah, I can't do this. But again, I'll reiterate that I think it would have been a tough task, but I still think Shiv could have been convinced. It's the moment when he denies killing that waiter
Yeah.
that just
And I
ends
called
shit.
him
Like she's
foolish
like,
for that. Like,
no,
that is not how you defend your
no.
case. Like, that was when he really destroyed it. Because, again, it's either he did it and he's a murderer, or
Mm-hmm,
he didn't do it and told them he did it, which makes him a controlling psycho worse than their father.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
neither of those things helps him. Like, because that kind of brought them, that whole thing brought on one of the biggest moments of togetherness for those three that we've ever seen in the show. And
Mm-hmm.
for him to just completely invalidate it for the sake of chasing power is wild.
That's what. First of all, I think I don't know if I made this clear enough. I know I definitely made it clear enough in conversation after. That is so depressing to me. I think so. That's what I mean when I
Insanely
said that was the
depressing.
like ultimate moment of being Logan. When that happened, I genuinely felt so bad for Kendall as a human being. I was like,
Like,
you literally have
this
nothing
is
in
how
your
far
body
you've fallen.
anymore.
You remember that episode where
Like,
like Tom is telling
mhm,
Greg, "You have no principles."
you have no
Yeah, like
morals. Yeah,
literally,
yeah,
like he's like, "Don't be an asshole, Greg. You don't have principles."
yeah. Principles.
Kendall actually had principles. He believed himself better than his father,
Hmm.
but now he's fallen so far that he's willing to do like he's willing to bend the truth for essentially nothing. Like losing Jess,
Doing yeah,
I feel like
doing NRPI, which is no real
exactly
persons
that was his
involved for the
NRPI
for the
moment.
waiter is. I was like, oh, you're just an empty
Like
void.
you've gone
Like
from feeling
there is
bad about
nothing
this
into you as a person.
to now being the NRPI guy. Like you, oh,
Like,
that's a real
like when it happened,
tragedy.
I was
That's
like,
a real tragedy.
oh, and I was like, yeah, you're not even a shell. You're not even a husk of a person. Like this is
You're
so
just
to me. It was
dust.
so. I'm like, this is so depressing. The two things that were really depressing to me in that episode are that I'm finding out that Logan promised. I don't know if we talked about it in the finale. Promised it to him at 7. I think that's a quick
Yeah, to
detour.
Candy Kitchen in Bridgehampton.
That that broke my heart because I'm just like, at 7, that's when parents are meant to be like, you can do whatever you want to be. You can be an astronaut. You can be a scientist. You can be a clown. You can do whatever you want to. Like the world is
Be
your
a
oyster or
clown.
whatever. And then yeah, just if you want to go to the circus, um, and then Logan is like, not even you can be. It's like this is what you are going to do. So obviously, like it's the worst version of like we all say, oh, parents shouldn't tell their children that they can only study medicine or they can only study finance or whatever. Like, you should let children do whatever. We all say that that's wrong. And then Logan is doing like the worst version of that. He's like,
You raise a
oh, when
child
he
as a
said that thing,
plot
it
device
broke
in
my
your own
heart.
story rather than a human being of their own, and that's just
Jesus,
pretty
I mean
wild.
that's well put. Like even that moment, Shiv is like, yeah, he shouldn't have done that, and it's just like it's so like because we're like, oh, why does Kendall care so much? Because for 30 plus years, that's what he's thought. Like, oh yeah, imagine knowing your destiny and doing everything you can to get that destiny. And it just keeps on like, that was. I feel like that promise from Logan was so devastating. And then obviously Kendall doing an RPI for the waiter. I was like, yeah, this depresses me. And you can see it like they held on to that moment. That was like their moment. That's when it became a family. That's when they became siblings again, right? Um, they went all in for against their dad. They didn't do the water gun moment. Like that was it.
United in
And
the
then
business,
Logan,
yeah.
so yeah, and Roman when Roman is like Roman like, wait, you made that up so that we could
Like, was that a
engineer
move?
to be like that was a tactic. Oh, they were like Roman was like like Roman was they were both heartbroken. Like, but Roman was like, no, like yeah that. So I think that's the
Yeah,
moment where he,
that's what Roman
he
says, though.
loses.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Because Roman's like, Shiv, can we just go? And then he's like, wait, what? Like, no, fuck no, Shiv, you have to go vote no. And obviously he later says that they're bullshit. So I don't know if that's helped anything, but that's my thinking of the Shiv thing. I really don't think the Shiv thing is that controversial. I am actually so I don't know. Like I'm a bit confused as to why it's so controversial. Because I just feel like it makes sense. If Roma was one that did the backs, I'm like, it doesn't make
I'll
sense. But
tell you
to
why.
Shiv, it's like,
It's
yeah.
because, well, first of all, people feel like this series has been building to the idea of one of these guys taking over, right? And like we said last week, there's this whole thing of people trying to surprise their audience in the finales in ways that might not necessarily be earned. But I do think this is earned.
Mm-hmm,
I think that if you really look at some of the signs, Tom becoming CEO is almost inevitable because he's actually very Logan. He's a guy who came up from basically nothing, almost nothing, like compared to these people anyway. And he worked his way up
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
in a world that was trying to ridicule him. And he understands what it's like to struggle. Like he knows how to actually, like Logan said, that life is a fight for a knife in the mud. And Tom has essentially been
mm-hmm.
doing that for a while, even in his own marriage. So I think I think that he's kind of prepared for this in a way that these guys are not. And also he knows how to wield power but still be subservient. He's kind of like good at wielding power on behalf of other people. So he's exactly what Matson needs.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the way Matson reacts to
Mm-hmm.
certain things being said to him, about him, all those things, and suddenly certain things kind of start to like add up. I think that Shiv like I said, was never fully on board, and it's just something that we're sort of going to have to deal with. I think the reason that it's so weird for a lot of people is that it seems like the decision comes out of nowhere. It seems like she can't figure out what to do, and it's difficult for her in that sense. So I think that like the problem for Shiv in that moment is not something that's even fully known to her. Like it's one of those things where you get up and you know that there's a problem and it's like, okay, what's going on? So yeah, I guess let's get into some questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually going to start with a really good one from very active listener Chubi, who was um, who was thinking along the same lines as us regarding the use of Tom. This is relevant to what we are just talking about. Um, he asked if Mencken doesn't win, like assuming the Wisconsin votes are
Mm-hmm.
redone
Mm-hmm.
and they actually vote blue, do we think Matson immediately removes Tom and becomes CEO himself? Because remember, they only put a US CEO there to placate Mencken, to
Mm-hmm.
kind of make the deal more palatable to him, because Mencken had promised the Roy boys that he was going to block the deal, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. But now, like, if Mencken isn't even president, what's Jimenez's problem with Matson being CEO? With nothing that we necessarily know of. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting one. And I guess also is Tom going to be removed, or is there value in having a quote unquote throat goat
Well,
like Tom as CEO?
I don't think Martin wants
Shiv's
to be
words.
CEO. Martin said it. He told us he wants a paint sponge. He wants someone.
Yeah,
He
kind of
wants a
like what
front
Elon
man.
does. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he wants a front man so that he can do the do under the hood. I don't think Tom Martin wants to be CEO. I think
What I love.
yeah, that's not bad. That was not a bad Skarsgård.
Skarsgård.
That was a good Skarsgård.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, no. So I don't think Tom's role as CEO is not stable. Like, but it won't be for Martin. It could
He
be for
doesn't have job security in
yeah,
your
his
mind.
job security. But I mean, like whichever way he'll probably if he does get he'll get his money. Like once he gets out, gets his
Mhm.
stock options and everything. But so like his role is not like he doesn't have tenure. Let's put it like that. But I don't think it's before Martin. and I don't think it will be because of the election.
Okay.
I think he does at least a
Okay.
year. I think he does at least a year as CEO at least.
But a year as CEO is still pretty good because I mean
Yeah,
Tom is
exactly.
technically still mostly a salary man, but
Yeah.
it's not going to take long for his stock options to kick in.
How long
And
did
once they kick in, they've kicked in.
how long did Shapek do? 2 years?
Not even. Maybe
Oh,
maybe
wasn't he
about
there
just
before COVID? It was just before COVID. No, he came in
yeah.
just
It
before
was
COVID.
yeah. So just about like I'm going to say like at the beginning,
Mm.
they kind of announced that thing like I guess just before COVID,
I
but
think
it
it was
started
like
to really
January or
become
February around that time, wasn't it?
yeah, it started to become a really active thing like in early
So maybe he
2020
did like 20 and a half years.
and
Yeah, I think Tom will be fine.
roughly
I
yeah
think Tom does at least a year. But it will be for Martin
yeah
if they remove, like, yeah, Martin wants his front man. Martin wants someone that can. And to be honest, that's probably why Tom gets sacked because he does something, like Martin does something and Tom has to take the fall for it. Like, probably that's probably how
yeah
it turns out. So, yeah. But no, good question. Thank you.
exactly.
Shout out Chubi.
His other question is about Harriet Walter. Harriet Walter plays Caroline Collingwood, Kendall, Roman, and Shiv's mom,
Mm-hmm.
but she also plays Rebecca Welton's mother in Ted Lasso,
Mm-hmm.
and she just has this. I should also add she. You can kind of say, I said before, you can kind of say she's Villanelle's bad mom, quote unquote, in
Mm-hmm.
Killing Eve.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is it with Harriet Walter and playing very distant, cold, unfeeling mothers? Is that just a thing?
She's
And
British.
that's wow. There you go. There's the answer. There's the answer. She's English. Oh my
I mean,
goodness.
I guess you guys touched on this in the Ted Lasso finale episode, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It turns out that many people don't seem to know that it's the same person playing like the two roles.
yeah, I heard Chinedu's incredulity at it on the Ted Lasso episode. She
Yeah,
also plays a mother figure. I can't remember if she's somebody's mother, but a mother figure in The Last Duel. So you have
and
that
she's
as
in The
well.
Crown as Winston's wife,
Yeah.
like I said. So
So, no, I mean, like, I don't know. She's just a good
that's the only
actress. And, like,
wholesome one.
do you want the depressing
She's good.
stories
She's
that,
versatile.
yeah, depressing stories that when you're an actress of a certain age, you tend to play mothers and wives. That's a depressing truth. I hate
That's just
I hate to break
depressing.
your heart. That's where Hollywood has worked. And then
Yeah.
I guess the good thing is that most of those roles that we've said, even though they're wives or mothers, they're actually good roles. Like Caroline Collingwood
Mhm.
is one of the greatest roles of all time. So even though she's a
Literally.
mother and an ex-wife, so yeah, she's just good. Like there's a way that Harriet Walter delivers those lines that is dripping with acid, and you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense that you're Villanelle's mom and you're the Roy terrible parent and all that.
Yeah, it actually makes a lot of sense to me because a lot of people seem to like there are people who feel like Caroline is just the worst. There are people who think she's hilarious because she's the worst, and then
Mm-hmm.
it turns out there's a whole group of people who doesn't actually even see the problem. Like my
What?
friend David actually asked me like, um, what is the issue with their mother? Like, like why do they hate her so much? Like I never understood what their
Um,
issue is. That's so
hello,
funny.
hello, David. Have you met her? Have you met Lady Caroline Collingwood? What do you mean? What the problem is?
Oh my
She
god.
told she told Shiv that Shiv was the reason. No, that Shiv knew how to turn the knife, twist the knife at
At
12.
11
Oh,
or
11.
12 or
Like,
something like that.
let's. This is not the
Oh my gosh.
Caroline defense podcast, please. She
Caroline
she
defense
deserves
podcast. No,
every hatred. Like Caroline, we've established that Caroline is probably worse. Did worse for these guys' mental and spiritual well being than Logan ever did. Let's just.
it's crazy because I love that's actually one of the most beautiful things about the first season because you spend the entire time looking at what they are and you're thinking,
Mm-hmm,
wow, they're like this despite their father in a sense.
mm-hmm,
And then you start to wonder at some point, I wonder what their other like half of their parenthood was what was that like, and then you
mm-hmm.
meet her and you're like, oh my goodness, I see it. Like
Like, oh wow,
immediately
you
she
guys.
shows up, she is just like a problem. She starts off by saying, oh, you're Greg Egg.
Yeah,
Which
your
is
dad
just so
used to run away with all the men in the village, something like that. Oh, please.
my goodness, that lady is
Anyway,
wild, bro.
what other questions do you have?
um well, actually, while we're on David, he was actually also asking me about the Pierce deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like weren't they going to acquire Pierce from the money they got from selling to Gojo? Because just stopping Matson was just the first part in their plan, right? They were also trying
Mm-hmm.
to go through with Pierce because remember they did promise them like 8 million or 10 million or something like that. What was the number again? I think it was 10.
It was 10, wasn't it?
It
Yeah.
was 10 million. It was an even ten
I think it
million,
was 10. Yeah. Yeah,
and
because it went from
Logan's
8 to let's just make an even 10.
yeah, Logan was like, congratulations on saying
I'm
the
saying the
biggest number,
biggest
you
fucking
morons.
number.
So
um, I think I'm confident in saying that PS deal is dead.
probably, yeah. I
I
mean,
don't
I
think
don't
these
see
guys are going to talk
Matson
to the.
wanting it.
Oh, no, but it wasn't Martin that was going to buy PS. It was the Royals. It
That's what
was.
I'm saying. So Matson is not going to want to continue down the line of going for Pierce because why? He doesn't need it.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't. Martin doesn't care about news. He just want ATN like we've established because of their
Yeah.
power and also to piss off Kendall and Roman. I don't think Kendall, Roman, and Shiv are buying PS because I don't think these guys are going to talk for a while. We can talk about that in a second. So I
Hmm.
think the PS. I think we're going to agree that the PS deal is dead. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
like
just
Shiv can buy it on her. Even if she had the money to buy it, she can't buy it on her own because she can't be competing against her husband's company. Right.
yeah.
Roman doesn't care.
It doesn't care
Kendall,
enough.
if Kendall stands up from that bench, will do Thanksgiving in church. But
Well,
like I said, we'll
he
touch on
from
all of
what we
that.
hear, he did stand up and try to enter
And
water.
almost went to the water. Yeah. But yeah, we'll talk about the characters when we leave them in a second. But yeah,
Uh, yeah, even regarding the PS thing, because Ikeme, who's also a long-time listener, he asked this as
shout
well, like
out.
regarding Pierce, and you know, he actually asked if that whole thing with Gojo, like the fact that the acquisition has gone through, is that actually better? Like the outcome we got, is it better for everyone involved? He said maybe not Greg, like maybe it's not best for Greg, but like so far, like this with this whole thing, I know because I know some people are discussing potential alternate endings to the show
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
what that could look like for everyone involved. But I guess, and of course, we'll touch on this when we start to talk about where the characters are left by the end of all this. But I guess an interesting question of like, how good is this really? Like, if compared to say Kendall being CEO, like that may have been bad for the company, maybe, but I don't know if it's necessarily fair for people to say that Kendall would have been like zero good at it. Like Kendall probably, I think he could have kind of done the job, just maybe not in the way that Matson would have wanted. And also, he would have spent a lot of time trying to be his father, though I guess
Mm-hmm.
maybe not as well since he finally somewhat became him at the end. It's very funny, and I think it's cool that we have all these different postulations to make. I think that just shows how strong the writing is, um, because there's so many places we could leave these people, and it's also like, would the writers ever want to show that to us? I mean, one of his other questions, Ikeme, was if I think we'll get a Succession movie down the line,
I don't think
something
so.
to close it down. I don't think that that's their style. I feel like
Mm.
that's not something that would really happen, and if it did, I don't know if Jesse would want to do it. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe if Mylord was involved, but I feel like it's just something where like I think they were very deliberate about allowing the story to end in a way that it was very clear that the world and life would continue in
Mm-hmm.
the series. So to kind of bring back um, everybody for a movie, which sort of, I think that kind of takes away the conclusions that people have made for themselves. And I think Jesse is the kind of writer that likes to leave people the chance to interpret things um, in a way within like the box that he's created.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um. He's also British, so unless it's a Christmas special, it's probably not going to happen, and it's not going to be
Basically, yeah.
Christmas special. Um. So I'm just assuming that Ikema doesn't mean like it means good as in financially good for the company, not good for their soul, not like good for them as individuals.
I guess it means both because you just said is it better for everyone. I think I guess yeah, financially probably their
So
souls
I think
are a write off for most of them at this point.
this goes back to my kind of like me bumping against people saying like, why couldn't the story end with one of the kids in charge? Because I
Hmm.
don't think that was the show we're ever watching. I think it's fair that we could have expected that was the show we're watching because show started Succession, whatever. But I don't think when you look at it, I don't think that's the show they're ever writing. I don't think they're writing a show where one of the kids, quote unquote, won. I think it was always like this company was gonna leave family control. I think it's it's to show that like again they're just fighting for this poison chalice, and I don't think he ever wanted any of the children, any of the kids, to actually become CEO. I think the search for CEO, the chase for CEO, was meant to destroy them in different monumental ways. But I don't think there was ever a situation where one of them end up in the big chair,
Hmm.
which again makes sense why it's Tom, because Tom is the interloper. Him and another interloper, even though not as interloping in Martin, but he's interloping country wise,
Yeah.
then take control of the thing. So financially, I don't know. Actually can't tell you. I think Kendall would have been fine. He'd have probably had some. He'd have probably have more losses than wins, but he'd have been
Hmm.
fine. Like, is there any company that we can think of where an offspring takes over from their father and is good, or even like good enough? Like, think about media in sports. Think of sports teams,
Yeah.
like in
It
film. Like, really,
it's
no.
always
Most
big
times they're
shoes to
not.
fill, especially when you're trying to be that person. Like another listener, Moriam, actually asked me if I feel Kendall would ever actually live up to, be his father. And I don't know, to be honest. I think that that's something we just have to guess at. I think that he would have been a different version of him, perhaps. Um, at the very end, you can almost see that whole thing where he's talking to Stewie, and his
Hmm.
feet are up in Logan's chair. It reminds me. I don't. This is so random, but it kind of reminds me of Animal Farm. And
Hmm.
in Animal Farm, you have like this sense of togetherness, this sense of unity among the farm animals. And there are people who are persecuted. Then over time, there are people who are also like celebrated. That leaders form, and then all of a sudden,
Mm-hmm.
like there's this society that's way worse than what they had under the tyrannical quote unquote farmer, right? I remember the writing on the wall that was like all animals are equal, and then eventually at some point it changes to all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
first of all, George Orwell, you like I don't even know what to call you. Like putting that in, I don't know why they made us read that like when we're so small, but yeah, it reminded me
Like,
of
where are the
that.
colors?
Literally,
We thought it was a book about animals and the sounds they make.
li-
What was going on?
literally, that was just blindsided. But now I think about it, and it's like it just reminded me of that. Just them,
Hmm.
that sight of Kendall laughing with Stewie, and then Shiv just cringing. It reminds me of like those like the pigs coming together, and literally I think one of those pigs was named Napoleon as well, and the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
pigs came together and like they were forming this government that was so based on nepotism and was so oppressing to like everyone else. A good horse like was sent to the glue factory. Like, sorry, I think I feel like I'm here processing Animal Farm now, but
Yes. Like, you're like, oh wow, this was so dark. What was I reading?
but yeah, that's kind of what that reminded me of. And I think the way those pigs kind of became the problem that they quote unquote set out to defeat is kind of what
Mm-hmm.
Kendall is now. And we've already talked about that with the whole NRPI thing and how he's willing to cast aside principles, morals, the value of human life for a goal that is essentially just based in ego. Like it's not like he's always styled himself as as the person who's going to save the world from
Mm-hmm.
the forces created by his father, but now he's championing those forces to create his own world, and that's not how that works. It's kind of like how in the Hunger Games, Katniss eventually shoots this lady because she realizes. I mean, spoilers for the Hunger Games, I guess, but
I mean, spoiler. Yeah, spoiler for the Hunger Games, but it's been like
yeah,
10
it's been
years.
a long time, which is why I feel fine saying it. But she realizes that it's literally more of the same, and then she tries to cut the cycle, and then that's how the whole thing ends. So yeah, it's hard to say whether he'd live up to that role, but I think he'd be kind of a different version. The person who asked the question we addressed earlier, Chrissy, about whether or not that was abuse in that moment, also asked me about what Shiv thought about that. Maybe Shiv like would have she wasn't there in the room, I think, when like Kendall and Roman had that hug,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that she probably could have expected from them.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at that, she knows that Roman probably wouldn't be necessarily strong enough to stop Kendall from having the worst tendencies. So she felt like she had to maybe take a stand there. since no one else really would. I mean, if Kendall is given absolute power, then he's just going to be like a version of Logan that is just like a kid in a candy store. It's like, yeah, I finally made it. It's like he's on some level, he's still that kid in the candy kitchen in Bridgehampton who's spent the
Mm-hmm.
past 33 years, because he's 40 now, thinking that,
Well, maybe
this is what I'm going to
41.
do.
No, actually, no,
Yeah,
40. Yeah, because it's
he
only
turned
3 months
40
is his
recently.
birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Um,
it's a lot.
I love you being diplomatic trying to answer whether Kendall would have been. No, Kendall would not have lived up to Logan. No, he just wouldn't have. He's not. It doesn't like. I don't want to say he doesn't have it in him because like that feeds into like old Gen X stereotypes or whatever. But
Mhm.
like he just couldn't. He did not have the same upbringing as Kendall. He does sorry as Logan. He doesn't have the same life
He doesn't have
experiences
the
as
same
Logan. He
drive
doesn't
and
like
fear of consequences.
yeah. And that's all those things lead to like he lived a life where every second of his life was probably planned for him and okay it's like it just and I'm not saying that people like that cannot be successful. They can,
Yeah.
but he probably can't go as far as Logan did or Logan went. And we can debate whether those things were right. Most of them were not. Logan should have done the things he did. That's fine. But unfortunately, as I'm sure this show is also trying to tell us, the way capitalism is built, you kind of have to do those things to be successful and have a legacy.
Hmm.
And I just don't think Kendall is built for that. I don't think any of them is built
He
for that.
doesn't realize
If
it
anything,
yet.
probably Tom. Tom is probably the most built for
Tom
that
could
because
be.
he
Yes.
has, like you mentioned earlier, he has the most similar upbringing to Logan. But I also just think when you're trying to live up to like that kind of honestly, if this show started, or rather at the start of the show, she probably had the best chance to have a legacy of her own because she was so far away from the thing.
Yeah.
And she was actually directly opposing Logan. Like she was on the left and Logan was on the right. But if you're following, like, if you're
She's brought into the
growing,
fold.
like, yeah, if you're growing under the shade of the tree, you're probably never going to outgrow the tree because you're using its shade. Like, it's impossible
Yeah.
to outgrow that tree. That's just the way it
Connor,
is.
funny enough, managed to
So
do it on some level. Like he's the only person that was like,
yeah, but
I
that's
want
because he
anything.
was just like
Yeah.
it's barely. I can't even call him growing. He was just existed. Like I was just like going with the wind essentially. So like,
Yeah, he said he
so
wants
yeah,
the
he's
wind
never gonna
that
have a legacy, but
feeds
he's
on
gonna have
insects that die
life.
inside of him while they are needy love sponges.
Oh wow, yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that when I was using the tree analogy. Any other questions?
Greg's overall value to the storyline from Miriam. I guess because there's a
So
whole group of people like Asusa, for example, loves Greg, and there's a whole group of people
yeah,
that feel Greg is just funny. But it turns out that there's actually a hive of people that wonder like, why is Greg even here? He's just annoying, and I find that to be more common among people who have watched all of Succession recently. Like they haven't been watching it over
yeah.
the years. Like they recently started the
Hmm.
show because they heard, okay, this thing is finally ending. Let me just check it out. Yeah. Those people are like, why is Greg so annoying? I literally
The
recommended
the
Succession to someone last
similarities
week. The first thing she asked me in episode 1, why is Greg annoying?
to me personally, the similarities to Greg and Jonah from Veep are just so clear. That might just be to me. Jonah is way more stupid, like intellectually than Greg. So that's not even a comparison.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I mean, one, Greg is funny. So like let's put that there. Greg is funny. But I think you have the option where Greg gets the chance to show why or how bad Tom can be. Because that's the one person that Tom gets
Hmm.
to have as a whipping boy. But then also Greg was our induction into the story. Greg was our avatar into the story, and he just also shows like obviously a he's not a Roy. He's what's his mom's name
Hirsch.
again? He's a Hirsch. Yes, Greg Hirsch. How did I forget? So he obviously has some money, but he also just shows us like the conniving and the backstabbing that is needed into this world. He's the one person that came in almost baby faced,
Yeah.
right? He didn't have to deal with everything else, and then we see him go through all the machinations as the seasons go on. So I don't even
Losing his
think like he's
principles.
oh yeah, it's almost yeah, it's showing like how that person becomes how someone becomes a Greg, right? Just by being by proximity to this power and this son that is Logan Roy. But
Yeah,
yeah,
like the way he's kind of our eyes and ears, like our proxy, so to speak, reminds me of like
Hmm.
I called him similar to Usopp in One Piece. Shout out to anybody who watches or reads One Piece, but yeah, it's because Usopp is like the one person in the group who's like the closest thing to being an actual human. Like most of these people are monsters at this point. I mean, it's a shonen anime. All these people are putting crazy feats. Shout out Ibuka, but I don't know. I think it's I think it's a bit of a like let me just say a slight oversight to say that Greg doesn't have real value in the story just because like there's so much that comes from it. Like even in the final season, the final episode, in fact, like there's so many things that just wouldn't happen without Greg. Think about the call he makes to Kendall. Think about like his negotiation with Logan. Think about him keeping the papers. Like Greg has really pulled his weight in this show. Like it's been amazing. And you know, speaking of people who love
Yeah.
Greg, I'd say Esther, who I mentioned earlier, was asking. She asked a bunch of things about how the show is paced. Like in this final season, you know, everything has been very like go 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 because the whole thing kind of happens over the span of less than 2 weeks, right? So
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
she was kind of asking like after this finale, do we think that things are going to go on this way? At least that's how I interpret the question. It's kind of like, are things going to continue being, I guess, not necessarily portrayed, but like, will they continue to occur in the show in the same way, like with this fast pace, with so much happening all at once, or are things kind of going to settle down? Like, what does the world look like after this? I know we're going to talk about what the characters are doing and where they're left, but what does the
Hmm.
world itself feel like? Like, the succession finally become like does it become maybe what it was like before the camera started rolling in season one, where everything is just like
Mm.
normal? There's a sense of like status quo. Because like the whole show we've been watching is basically like a 2 year period of just insanity that has happened in this as a
Hmm.
season in these people's lives. So after this now, does it go back to some sense of normalcy with Tom just steering the ship, Matson doing whatever nonsense he's doing, Logan and his kids out of the way, Caroline, you know, selling her soul for yet another house, whatever the case may be.
um. So I think part of it is going to be like we don't know, but I think it's going to
I
slow
think so
down
too.
because as we might touch on when we talk about the kids, I don't think the kids.
They just won't be as involved.
I just love how how we keep calling them
I
kids.
always like
Yeah,
to call them the
but they don't have
siblings because
any.
they are not children to me.
Yeah, but I just say kids like just instinctually.
Yeah, everyone
They
does.
have no reason. They have no fight. They have no drive to like literally wake up the next day and fight again. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah,
let's think about last time Kendall had a hit this big. It's his one episode
broke him.
6. And what does he do? He shrinks into his room for a while until he goes
Venture capital.
to Connor's
Yeah,
ranch, right? Yeah. So like I think no, it's Connor's ranch first, isn't it? Before because we see him like in that episode when Roman comes to get him
yeah. I think
after to come to
that's
Austerlitz.
all one. Yeah, yeah. It is. It is. It is Connor's ranch
Yeah,
first.
and the venture capital is before
Yes,
Tom's bachelor
that was
party.
episode
So
eight.
no, so
Yeah,
my point is like, and now they've all been hit like that. Shiv has 3 months to pregnancy. Like she needs no matter what she thinks, she needs to rest to have a safe delivery.
uh-huh.
So I do think everybody will rest. Martin has the C. So I think it's a calm period, and obviously I don't think they're going to fight again, but we can talk about that later. But I think there's going to be a calm period. I mean, it's like it's a weird cycle of events that led everything to happen within this
Hmm.
period, right? I guess 3 weeks ago they thought the plan was going to be dad's birthday. We're not going to go for that. Then
We're not even gonna talk to him.
the board meeting board meeting we get our PGN money and then the election.
Hmm.
That was the plan. But then Logan dies. Oh no, Connor's wedding in the middle there. But then Logan
Uh-huh.
dies, and then that just creates like 5 new things that need to happen within the next eight
Yeah.
days. So I don't think it was never like planned for it to happen like this within 10 days. I mean, from the character's point of view, and then things just happened, and they were like, "Oh
Even
fuck,
the
we need to
Living
actually get
Plus
things in
presentation,
order."
like I always wonder what would it have been like if Logan was the one on stage. And it's so funny saying that now because literally as we're recording this, WWDC 23 is happening. Shouts to Tim Cook and whatever they're cooking up to take people's money
Do you
next
think
season.
Logan would have? I don't think he'd have been on
He might
stage.
have.
Should
I
have just
feel
been
like
a
he would have
video.
shown up to like speak for a
But
bit.
wasn't that why he was recording the video?
I guess that's why he was recording the video, but I feel like maybe he would have made some kind of small appearance, maybe towards the end, or maybe like like he would have shown the video and
I
like
feel like
they would have just appeared or something.
yeah,
Because that video,
I feel like it'd have been Carl. I feel like it'd have been Carl
yeah, I guess it is kind of
as the
Carl's
business guy.
events with since it was like a CFO type of
Mm.
thing, and Frank is technically COO at this point.
See,
Yeah.
oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, he probably would have made an
So
appearance.
yeah, like these are things that like the kids would not have cared
Yeah.
about. 'Cause at this point, I've sold PG and like so. Yeah, I definitely don't think. Yeah, but so yeah, I don't think it will carry on as hectic. I think just
Okay, but
need to calm down. They need to have a
okay, but
good sleep.
sleep. Let's murder him so we can sleep. Oh my goodness. Okay, so with that in
Yeah.
mind, okay, so which
Mhm.
now that we know that, or we've decided that there's going to be a good sense of like quietude after all this, who do we think has had the
Mhm.
most growth in the show? Are they all this similar to how they were? And we know, I mean, Roman
Are
feels.
we are we using all the main characters? Sorry to interrupt. Are we using
I'm
all the
going to
main
say
characters?
all the main characters, or maybe even other people too. Like anybody who we can say, okay, we followed them throughout. I think for
Yeah,
example, someone like Roman, I feel for the most part is exactly where he started, maybe with a little bit more emotional intelligence, slightly more, but even that's
I
debatable.
think
I think Shiv is a little bit worse off. Has she grown as a person? I don't know. I think maybe Tom has grown as a person.
growth or change.
Well,
What we
the
doing?
word
Growth or
Asusa used
change?
was growth. I don't know necessarily.
If the answer is nobody. If
Yeah,
it's growth,
because
the
I
answer
feel
is
like most of
nobody.
them are the same people.
Maybe Jess.
Jess
Maybe
definitely grew a
Jess.
bit because do you see what Juliana Canfield posted with holding?
No.
Oh my god!
Oh, what the day is it? A day in the life of Jess, something like
Yeah,
that.
like she posted something along the lines of like she posted something along the lines of like Jess wrote a book and it was like escaping like
Oh,
the Roy's or something like that. Like
Jesus.
it was the most. I need to find this thing. It's on this like it's on her Instagram.
You know that kind of makes her just as bad as them.
Because
Like it means she's not the
she's
nice
profiting.
person
It
anymore.
is wild. Like I was actually so impressed by this because she said something along the line. The book she was holding was Roy Toy No More. Um it's funny. It's like Roy Toy No More. Leaving working in and leaving Waystar by Jess Jordan. And that is just too funny. Like it's
So she's just one of the people that, which makes she's one of the people that worked in the Trump administration and one of the millions of people that brought a book after. So
basically
like
I mean,
maybe she's
she would
yeah.
definitely have a
That's
lot
that's
to
quite
say. I
dark.
feel like it's an amazing picture. We'll put it like on the screen for everybody on YouTube, I guess. But like it's just wild to me that like this is something that didn't actually appear in the show, but it makes sense. Like I can't
Mhm.
tell right now if this is something that Juliana came up with as like her own joke, or if they had actually kind of written this into the story as an end, but didn't feel the need to show it. Kind of like what Christopher Nolan does. Like he's always said that even if you don't show
Yeah,
how certain things end, you as the writer should know how they end. And I feel like maybe this is just a thing.
yeah. I feel like that's probably like
Yeah,
character work
exactly.
from her. That's probably just, yeah. Um, back to your original question, growth. I don't think anyone change is a bit different. I mean, Jeremy has said
Yeah,
a few times on interviews that he believes that Jesse doesn't believe in change. I've listened to Jesse say that, well, that's not entirely true. He does believe that
yeah,
people change, just maybe a bit
yeah.
slowly and over time.
Depends on how that change, I guess, is prompted.
Yeah, it depends on what we describe as change. I don't think anybody that finished this show like finished with something that they do
Okay,
already
let's
have in
put it.
them. I think Shiv already had this in her.
Yeah.
I think, but so you get what I mean. But then
Okay,
it's like,
let's put it down to brass tacks. Who has a
mhm.
different? Who has a mindset right now that shows any kind of difference from the mindset that they had right at the beginning? What about their views on the world? I
Tom
say
and
Tom
Greg,
and Greg as well. Yes, I
Tom and
think
Greg, yeah,
the
only them,
graybeards are all the same, including
of
including
course.
Jerry, who actually has gone through a lot very recently. I think Jess has also changed a bit because I think there was a lot of stuff that she was willing to kind of like let go. That now she's like, you know what? I think this is the end of the ride for me. So I'm gonna add Jess to
Mhm.
that list. There's some characters that probably are not capable of changing at all. Someone like Matson, for example, who showed up at the end of season 3, and just who would have known that Skarsgård's character was going to be this important, you know? Um, yeah, Stewie is simple. Yeah,
Definitely not them.
definitely not them.
Definitely not Skarsgård. Yeah, Skarsgård said he got the call at the end of season 3. I was like, hey, yeah, Logan is dying. You're gonna have a bigger role, so definitely not Skarsgård.
Wild.
Um, I don't, I don't think any of the siblings change.
Uh-huh.
I think they had this
I
in
feel
them.
like not even Rava changes.
Um,
I feel like she was always ready to do what she did at the end. I think she just needed a big push.
yeah,
Marsha? No, same person.
I think if we're talking about change, I think it's just Tom and Greg. Okay. Any final questions?
Yeah, I guess some quick ones. Who do you think Logan loved the most from Asusa?
Kendall.
I will agree with you on that, though he
But
claims
also,
that Shiv is his
sorry.
favorite.
E- yes, I guess it's fathers and sons, but I think he loved Kendall the most because he he saw Kendall. I think it was like a nihilistic thing, not nihilistic, sorry, narcissistic thing. Like he saw Kendall as the person, right? The next in
An
line, so
extension of
he
him.
loved him. Yeah, so he loved him the most. I think it's Kendall. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess we're
Oh,
about
okay.
to.
Sorry. Let me. Oh, sorry. I was
No,
meant
go
to.
on.
He loved Kendall the most, but I think she had the biggest soft spot for Shiv, and that's a fathers and daughters thing.
Okay,
I don't
that's
know if that's
fair.
possible, but that's what I think. Anyway.
I guess we'll find out at some point if I know we have children. I guess well, we're about to kind of get into this. This is just a question about like if we think the show ended in a good spot. Like technically it could have gone on and become something like Grey's Anatomy, where like there's so much that can be explored and they just never stop exploring. I don't know that the Succession writers would have done that. I think they've always been very big on showing restraint.
Mm.
Um, and I feel like not that there's anything wrong with Grey's Anatomy. I like Grey's Anatomy quite a lot myself. I can't believe how many seasons that show has. It's literally like it's about to be like 20 seasons. Um, but yeah,
Do you know? I remember. Sorry, random thing.
yeah, go
I
on.
watched the first episode of Grey's Anatomy
Hmm.
on DSTV. This was probably like months after it first aired,
Hmm.
and I remember because
2005, I think.
I was preparing to travel to Abuja,
Uh huh.
like I think to visit Loyola either for an interview or something. So
Uh huh.
in my head, that Loyola, the start of secondary school, coincides with Grey's Anatomy starting is such a wild thing to think about because just like Jesus Christ, that's
You know how
like
many years it's been,
two whole sections of my life. Three actually is like secondary school, uni, and post uni, and Grey's
and
Anatomy
it's
is
the
still
show is
going
still
on.
going on,
Anyway, yeah,
and it
nah, I
kills
always I
nothing.
always think
It's
about that
basically
when
a
I think
soap
of
opera at
Grey's.
this point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, would basically do we think it ended where it should have? I think that it was fine. I like I said, I enjoy the fact that they've left things clear but open ended, and I think that's
Mm-hmm.
very hard to do from a writing perspective. So I commend them for that. The last question we're gonna do today. Um, if we had a chance to be in any episode, which one would it be? I'm gonna let you go first.
Oh, mine is easy. Turnhaven. I would want to be on that table when Shiv does that thing. When Shiv. So sorry if you don't remember. Turnhaven is the episode where the
Season two,
Roys meet the
episode 5.
Pierces.
Yeah.
Yeah, meet the Pierces for the first time. I would want to be on that table when Shiv. Also, but when Roman is acting like he's read a book before, or Connor is doing political jousting with I can't remember his name.
Maxim,
Maxim, yeah.
who's now his
But
guy. My
yeah,
liege.
or Marsha being an ear in Logan's, sorry, if flying Logan's ear, and it's like, will you
Uh-huh.
stop? And then she does that like kind of nervous, also kind of like I'm gonna kill you laughter. 10 heaven, 100%. I would love to be. Also, I get to be close to Naomi Pierce, so
Makes sense.
yeah.
There's so much, but I guess the one I'm gonna say right now is season 2, episode 6, the one right after Argestes, where they go to
That's
that
so on
conference.
brand for you. That
It actually is, right?
I would not like. I'll be so bored.
Oh
I'll
my
actually be
god.
so bored at Justice. Jesus Christ,
Because
that's so on brand
just
for
because
you.
like just because so many things were going on and like the cruise scandal came to light, just watching them scramble would have been
Stop
amazing.
lying. You would want to be there because all the tech billionaires are there and they get to do show off tech stuff.
Well, fine, fine,
Don't
fine.
lie.
I'm not lying. Two things can be true at the same time.
True. Fair enough.
Yeah,
Fair
so
enough.
yeah, that probably would have been a lot of fun. I think a close second for me probably would be there's this episode in I guess this season 3 episode, too much birthday. Like I just to be
Ooh.
there
Oh, that would
helping.
have actually no. That's actually a very good answer.
Yeah,
Actually, being at Kendall's birthday party would have been very fun.
that would have been so much. Like
That would have been very fun to be at Kendall's birthday
all
party.
the
That's
different
actually a good
sections
answer.
of the party, the little stupid tree house where like he put all the rich people, the VIPs, the main floor, watching Comfrey like almost melt down. And maybe I could have helped
Watching
her.
watching Shiv
She'll
meltdown
melt down too. Yeah,
and her dancing. That would have actually been so fun being at the birthday
the
party.
quote
The music
unquote
was
little daddy
good. The
dance.
music was so good.
Yeah,
Like he had, I think he had J House. I remember him having J House. I think he had British music. He had
yeah.
America. It was so good at his birthday
There was
party.
a lot going on. Shouts out to his people for putting that together. So yeah, I think those are probably my top 2 episodes. And just for anyone listening, the listener who asked this question, Asosa said her answer would be Safe Room, because that would have been an incredible thing to watch. Just like everybody
That's
scrambling.
so chaotic.
Though I'm like, yes, because she said it was
She
chaotic, but at
knows
the
she
same time,
has to be involved in the
what if
party.
there was real danger?
Yeah, she knows she has to. There was somebody literally shot himself in that episode. Like she knows she has to be involved in the episode, right? That's so chaotic
Yeah,
that that's what she chose.
yeah, facts.
But I mean, I guess it's worth it watching Tom and Greg run through the hallway. That made it worth it.
Oh my god, the fight with the pelting of the bottles. My
The
goodness.
bottles.
Yeah.
Greg. Anyway, okay.
I think that's
Another
it for
question.
I think that is it for questions. We've pretty much covered everything that has been
Okay. I mean, we
asked
hope
one
we
way
are
or
able to
another.
answer some of you guys' questions.
Yeah, still
But I
hit
think
us
what we
up on
should do
Twitter
now,
if you have anything else. But yeah.
yeah. To wrap up now, I think we just talk about kind of where the show leaves the characters and what we think about it. Um. So you asked the question earlier about do we like where this show ends, and I think like Jesse kind of explained it perfectly in an interview I listened to where he was like, "This is the show's like the show no longer has interest in these characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like their lives still go on, but we don't care anymore because basically because they are no longer titans of industry, really.
Yeah,
Like,
the point of
and
the
that's
show
kind of how
was
the
the
world,
succession, and now the succession has happened. So basically, the show could
yeah,
continue, but it would be a new show about something else because it's no longer
yeah.
about the succession.
And it's also just even succession aside, it's also just like these guys are just rich people that don't like
Random
they
rich
don't really
people
have
who are
any
not important to the
relevant.
story.
Yeah, they're not even if such a, they're not the CEO of Waystar, they're not the CEO of Waystar, they're not the president of Waystar, they're not like a the chief of staff of a presidential aspirant. They're
They're not
just
financiers,
rich.
nothing.
They're just rich people. Like just like I don't really care about you. Obviously, we know as watching it, there's more to them than that. But like the show, and something I really don't like in finales, right? Barry did a version of this, but Barry did it well in the way that I liked it. But what I
Okay.
don't like in finales is when they skip and we kind of see the end of the character.
Yeah.
Like
Like a flash
Veep
forward
comes to
type of thing.
mind, yeah, or like
6 feet
30
under.
years
Uh,
later. I don't like that personally. I only realized I didn't like it recently when I was thinking about Succession finale. I was like, I don't. I, if your story ends there, then that's fine. But I don't want to have an ending of where this story has ended and you now show me the characters 30. I don't want to see that. I want to kind of like let my imagination run wild, which is like, for example, now if this finale showed us 30 years later at like Roman's funeral and then you see Shiv and Kendall and they're like, oh, we haven't spoken in 15 years. I'm like, I don't really want to see all of that, right? So like in terms of where it ended, I think it ended well. I'm happy where it ended. But let's just
yeah.
quickly,
How to
so
Get Away with Murder did that whole thing too.
they
Ugh,
did, didn't they?
all these,
Yeah.
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 It's not the best.
It's not. I don't. It's not something I just don't like in finales. To be honest, to be fair, Mrs. Mays did a version of Mrs. Mays did a version of it, but to be fair to them, they had kind of like been planting the seeds across the season. Like there were
Yeah.
time jumps within episodes, so I guess it kind of worked.
Yeah.
But again, even when it came out, I was like, I don't know if I want to see this. Anyway, okay, let's start with Roman. Right, so we see Roman in Martini bars. We've alluded to this episode already, and you and I kind of agreed on the finale episode that Roman will be fine. He's basically where he started off. However, as I said, I've been inhaling interviews in the past week. Mylord and Jeremy Strong have really dark interpretation of that scene, like really dark interpretations. Like they both independently, not in the same interview, where like they think this signals the start of alcoholism for Roman.
Yeah.
And I
I
was like,
heard that too. I
Jesus.
was like, here we are thinking, Roman is quote unquote free, so he's somewhat fine. But they're like,
Hmm.
there's actually some darkness there that people are not potentially acknowledging. Which is like, remember, I was like, wait, hold on, you guys pride yourselves in not wanting to over explain things to the audience. And the one thing you explained is just correcting us to say, actually, Roman is not fine.
Well, I mean, okay, to be fair to them, I think one, they don't want to give answers when the show is going on because they don't
Yeah.
want people to
I guess they feel good not to talk
they don't
about
want
it
to
now
affect
that
the
it's,
interpretation.
yeah, now that it's over.
Yeah. But also they've always said, as like most creators do, like nobody really wants to tell you how to read their stuff. They've always said like, this is my thinking of it.
Hmm.
It's not written anywhere. Jesse hasn't written anywhere. It's not set in stone. It's just how I think this story runs and like the way like we think that. And I was like, wow. I don't know if I want to buy it. I think I want to stick to our our own more hopeful interpretation. But I did like, yeah, they kind of it was weird, both of them saying alcoholism. I was like, huh, that's kind of it's kind of scary. That's what because again, Roma is not someone that we've known to have like not even issues. Like we've not seen him do drugs on the show, so it's just like, oh, that's
Mm,
interesting that they say that. I don't think we've seen Roman do drugs.
I feel like there is a scene in episode 4 after the Wrecking Ball where he goes home with the person he was with at the time. The
Yeah,
person that was like, I feel like there were
they were
drugs
not. No, I
nearby,
can't
but
remember because
okay, I
obviously,
guess
good
I'm
on
not
you to
sure.
bring that episode up. I said this episode because the episode was not like, already explicit, but like obviously the waiter calls
Hmm.
and they do some choice things with the
Yeah,
phone, but I don't think there was. I don't think
yeah,
there was drugs. I don't remember drugs being involved.
okay, just checking. Yeah,
And obviously, we've
yeah,
seen. Oh, we haven't
okay.
seen. Have we seen? No, we haven't seen Shiv do cocaine. Martin offered it to her, but we
I
did.
think the only person I don't think the only person we really see do drugs other than Kendall is Tom in the election episode. Tom
Yeah,
and Greg.
obviously Stewie, but yeah.
Yeah, Stewie as well. Yeah,
Um.
yeah, literally Stewie. My goodness.
Okay. So, so yeah. I mean, I guess Roman is open to interpretation. Shiv, again, Shiv. I think we kind of covered this last week, but like, she's in a position where I was with someone they were like, Shiv is in the best position she could ever be, which is not ever be, but like in the position where she's shown the most intelligence over the course of the show, which is advising a powerful person. And I was like,
Yeah,
huh,
she is.
that's actually a good
Even
point.
though she's kind of like, wife to the CEO. I
Mm,
mean, Moriam asked a question about like who now has the power between Tom and Shiv now that like the Roy name is not necessarily connected to the company. Like how they say, "Oh, my name is on the
mhm,
door,"
mhm.
not necessarily anymore, right? So this
Well, it
is
will
more
still
like
be
the
because it's
the
still
master.
Gojo. It's Gojo. Oh no, it's
It's
Gojo Waystar, not Gojo Royco.
it's Gojo Waystar
Oh
now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's Gojo Waystar now. So I feel like, well, first of all, for the Shiv and Tom thing, that's just a stalemate. But like I think Tom's the dynamic has definitely changed. I think Tom is way more powerful than he was in the
mhm.
marriage. Now they're kind of just depressingly almost somewhat equal. I don't think that because there is some parity there. What he doesn't have in terms of endless riches and wealth, he now has in power and influence. Whereas she has endless riches and wealth
That's
but
the
no
thing.
power and
Like,
influence.
I don't. I think there's been a power change definitely, but like her money is ridiculous though. Her money is long. Like her money
Yeah,
is not.
it's very long.
It's like not only was it long before, like she has more money. So it's just like you kind of feel like she wanted to, she can probably
Yeah,
wrestle back control because again, he's no longer on salary at least for a few, but like he's still not entirely secure. Like one bad firing and he could
yeah.
be.
But we see that's another thing I wonder about actually. The question, the company has been
Mhm,
bought, and everybody's going to get their cash and stock options or
mhm.
whatever. But what about their board seats? Kendall, Roman, and Shiv are all on the board. And do they remain on the board? That's the one. That's at least I guess that's a question from me. That's something I've been thinking about. Do they remain on the board, or is Martin going to remove them from the board? And obviously, Tom now being CEO means he is also on the board now. So
Well, doesn't that depends on
yeah,
Matson,
I don't.
doesn't it? Whether he wants to fire them or
Yeah,
not.
that's what I'm saying. It depends on if Martin is going to remove them from the board.
So again, we
Because
don't know.
board being a board of directors on the board of directors for a company like this is technically like a choice like slash election thing. Like basically he can essentially make it so that they aren't re-elected to be on the
Hmm.
board.
Yeah, but again, that's another thing that we just don't know what happens the next day. But again, I think Shiv, it's like You obviously said that she's like her mother now. I still think that's a bit harsh. I think she has even more agency than Caroline, but
I said somewhat.
somewhat.
Yeah, she does. I
Okay.
said she's somewhat. It's like a new version of it where like, she has some control, but eventually like she's going to kind of just become the person with like, because I mean you've always said Shiv is like the funniest sibling, and yeah, I think she's going to carry that into old age and become like the witty old lady that is just like annoying everybody and doesn't care that she's annoying everybody.
In terms of the cold hard versus in terms of this show, X versus Y versus Z, I think Shiv is in the best position to do well going forward.
Yes, 100%.
I think
I
so.
agree.
And so it goes back to the her quote unquote betraying Kendall actually worked for her. Like I think out of the three siblings, she's the one in the best position to like. Plus, she always has the politics stuff to fall back on, right? She can always
Uh,
find another Democrat
Assuming
to
anybody
run for
takes her
governor.
seriously now after all this.
Yeah, so I think she's in a good position. Kendall, I said and I stand by. I don't think Kendall sees 5 years from now. I just don't think Kendall
Oh
survives.
God.
I just can't see it,
Oh
man. I
my
don't know how you
God.
guys see it. I just don't think Kendall survives. So like I wish him very
Oh
well
gosh.
as a man. I just
But he's going to die, is what you said. I wish him well, but
I'm
he's
not
going to die.
I'm not writing his story. He can change his story, but I just like he would require incredible therapy to be able to like because this was it. This was the moment. This was
This was his purpose in
for
life.
33 years, right? So it's
Yeah.
now like he's fumbled that. How do you move on? No matter what he does, he will never fill that hole. And we know that he's a
Yeah.
person who that hole has destroyed. He has sent him so many times
He's gonna
to the
fall back
brink.
into addiction, if nothing else.
If not, I don't think Kendall will necessarily put a gun to his head and blow his brains out. Apologies for that very graphic description, but I think that there's just so many avenues for Kendall losing his life. There's the actual suicide. There's the drug addiction. That I just feel like I
Uh-huh.
just can't see it. Like he's going to be so depressed. There is so much to fill that hole, and then on top of all that, he's now a terrible person. Like he's always been a terrible person, but like now, like we said before, he's just dust. He's no longer a husk. Like he's just
Yeah.
like so. He doesn't like what? How does he survive this for the next 10 years? He's young. He's 40, but like, how does he reach 60? How does he reach 80? Like you can only be miserable and angry for so long.
He's just gonna have to seek advice from Frank. Frank is like the last person he has
Frank
in this
Frank
life.
betrayed him,
In the
which is
end,
something we
yeah.
never really
Well,
talked
I
about.
don't
But
know.
Frank voted against him. Frank, his godfather.
I mean, do we consider that a betrayal though? Because Frank always wanted the deal to go through. When Kendall told him at the end of the tailgate party episode, um, that he wanted to, make it just him and
Mhm.
then remove the siblings.
Mhm.
Did Frank actually agree? He was like,
He
okay,
didn't
if that's the
agree,
same,
but he
like,
was receptive when he was like, that Martin's numbers are fake. Frank was receptive.
mhm,
Frank was in a position was like receptive.
yeah,
But so I'm just saying, like, I don't know who. I don't think he has anyone to turn to. He doesn't have a connection with Jess, as we mentioned. Doesn't have a connection with his kids, with Rava. It's just like, how long can he really do this? Like, 5 years. I don't know. 5 years is too pessimistic, but just how long can he really do what he needs like to survive? Like, I don't. I think it's going to be months before he speaks to Shiv. Maybe even years.
yeah.
Roman as well. Like, I don't think they're going to be there when Shiv gives birth. Like, so it's just like, yeah, I'll be very so like the things that were said in that room seemed like Roman bringing up his kids, Shiv bringing up the fact that he killed someone. I just feel like those are things even for them. I don't think there's anything you not come back from. So
Well, I mean, people have come back from some crazy fights in this show. Like if Tom and Shiv can come back from that fight in episode 7.
yes, but they're coming back for that
Oh,
from that fight for what do you call it? It's convenience. It's for convenience.
yeah. Whereas in this case, there's no need for
There
them to
isn't.
come back, I guess.
There isn't.
Other than the fact that they're flesh and blood, but I guess that doesn't matter. Whatever.
So I think that has mattered a lot of times, but I think this time, I I might be overreacting to this, and maybe I'm missing something. But I think this is one time where the personal and the financial, or the personal and the business, actually crossed in an argument. Like they've
Hmm.
always had their financial fights, and then they had somebody's dinner the next day. But like this time, to defend a financial decision, Roman brought up his kids. She brought up the fact that he killed someone. Like, it's just like, it, I don't know. I don't know how they move on from that. I just don't.
Yeah, not the greatest.
Not the greatest at all. Anyway, I don't know. What are your own final thoughts on where we leave this? We leave Kendall.
Uh, I guess I just hope Colin continues to do his job. Prevent this guy from jumping into any rivers.
Yeah, but he's not going to prevent him
Because
from taking his drugs.
I guess so. I guess so. Gee, I wonder what happens to Hugo. Anyway,
Hugo will be fine. He'll find a job at like one of the more right wing. He's a PR person. He'll spin it. He'll be fine. He won't have his millions that he was woofing for, but he'll be fine.
But Kendall is no longer around to save him from the insider trading accusations that are coming his way.
You think they'll come up?
They could. I mean, it's only been a few days since then.
It's actually only been a few days. Yeah, it's actually only been a few days.
Yeah, but I guess we'll just have to leave that one open ended. But yeah, I think let's just say I see the sense in what you're saying, and I just hope that he survives more than 5 years.
Oh, I mean, I do too. I just don't see it, but yeah. I do obviously as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, spoiler alert. This is probably going to be my best show of the year. So I guess we'll talk about it when I'm doing my top 10. Like, I cannot, there's no subterfuge there.
Who could have predicted that?
And just like, yeah, I was like, I think one of the best shows of all time. Like, speaking of, I'm probably going to try and find a way to get Ayo to come on this podcast and talk about Succession because he has some takes and he has some thoughts that need to be on air so that I can keep them forever.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. So anyway,
you're trying to trap him.
Oh, 100%. He needs to have we need to have this thought.
Oh my god.
My new thing is to find whenever my friends drop a hot take, I try to get them on the podcast so I can have it. So when you deny that you said it, I'm like, no, you said this. You said it. But no, I mean, look, I love the show. Love the show.
What the hell?
I was listening to a podcast, no free ads, and they mentioned what made this show so good. And it's something that we know, something I've mentioned many times, but we've never actually, has never been put together in such a simple sentence. Like, this show has the comedic chops of Veep and the dramatic chops of Breaking Bad and Mad Men. And I was just like, yes, that is it. Like, that there is no other way of explaining. Like, it's the best comedy and the best drama. So obviously it's the best show.
Which means that it has the best dialogue. Like, because it's a balance of comedy and drama, which is essentially what real life tends to be. It's just the closest thing to being realistic in terms of the way people interact.
Yeah.
And that's why I've always said that, if anything, even if someone can say Succession is the best show in the world, I feel confident still in saying that it's the show with the best dialogue that I can think of. Like, the dialogue is just so great. Even when it's like veering into like crazy territory of like, how can someone say this in real life? It's still just too funny.
Yeah.
Like, it's either very realistic or hilarious. And even then, it's just like, they make it realistic feeling because the characters in the show who are saying those words are very capable of saying them.
Yeah.
Like, even the insults we had at the beginning, like, these insults in this show are legendary at this point. It's like, how can somebody say "buckle up, fucklehead"? What's like, what? How do you come up with that?
Just what you said, I was trying to think of, is there anything, I don't think there's a show better dialogue, but like, there's something I can use just to have a debate, but like, there's not. But what came to my mind was The Great. Guys, please go watch The Great. The reductive way that I've seen people describe it, not reductive in an insulting way, but just the easy catch-all way to describe
funny.
it.
The Great, that's the one on Hulu, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The one on Hulu. So I've watched Catherine the Great, the one on HBO, which
different
is a lot more.
Yeah.
I know that one is
different shows.
It's a completely different show about the same person, two different takes. There's Helen Mirren, and then there's like everything else that's hilarious that the Hulu one is doing.
I was going to say, I can't remember if it's Elle or Dakota. Jeez, this is like one of them, and then Nicholas Holt in an incredible performance. Anyway, the catch-all term depends is The Crown meets Succession. So like, God, the words, the phrases that I said on that show rival Succession in terms of like vulgarity. I cannot like.
Really?
The Great. Oh my God.
It's all funny.
Your guys, your guys on the show as well. Adam Godley. That doesn't sound correct.
That is
He
the name
was
actually.
oh Godly, yeah. I don't know. I was like
Yeah,
that sounded correct in my head, but when I said it, I was like that doesn't sound correct. But yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, let's go with the great season three. Is that I haven't watched it because obviously we've been busy over the last few months, but that's
Hmm.
top of my list. Anyway,
Oh,
um,
maybe I'll check that show out. Actually, finally,
yeah. So it's like sorry about Catherine Great, but it's very very like loosely
that one is
based.
like,
Let's put it like that.
yeah,
And the
and
dialogue is very anachronistic, which is obviously nice. I like that. So like,
yeah.
um, anyway, is that it? Any final thoughts?
I guess just that this is one of those shows that like it makes what we do here a lot of fun. It's
Fun and
just
easy, yeah.
th-
Or not
there's
easy
just so
because
much, not necessarily easy, but at least it's easy in the moment when we
mm,
do the talking because there's just so much to get into.
yeah, it's not easy when I'm
Um,
editing it. But
like I was talking with someone yesterday about how like HBO shows just like they just have this way. I don't know how they do it, but they have this way of just diving into the culture. It reminds me of an article I read once that said like in a world where Netflix thinks more is better and just bringing out a show every 10 minutes,
mm,
HBO is sticking to the idea that better is better, and there's like a limited amount of stuff, but like they're the ones who are winning the most awards. They're the ones who, even if you could remove the awards and you say like whatever you want about award shows, like HBO shows are the ones people keep talking about the most. And I think it's
hmm
partly because of how they're released. I know I've talked before about like binging versus like watching
don't get me
gradually.
started. Don't get me
Yeah,
started
but
because
let's just say it's easier to build a connection with a well written character if you're allowed to keep that connection and discuss that
for
person
two
like a
months.
real person with the people in
Yeah.
your life rather than
hmm
like Stranger Things is one of the biggest shows in the world and it just comes out in one weekend and then nobody's talking about it on Monday. Like how is that even possible
No,
for such a thing to happen?
even to be fair, Trinidad Thing, talking about it on Monday. The random Netflix one is that's lasting 12 hours of conversation, and then they're
Yeah,
done. So no, I 100% agree with you. But I
yeah,
also
it's
think
good.
like the other way they do it is that they like nobody that's worked or not that was going to be very blasphemous. Most people that work at HBO come out and say like they respect the creative right. Like so, what they do, they go and look for a writer that they like,
And they
and then
what
they
just give that person creative freedom.
yeah. I was
Yeah.
listening to Bill Hader and he said that like yeah. They saw him in the Skeleton Twin, which is a movie that he did with Kristen Wiig. I think that was like 2015 or something. I
Hmm.
watched that. It was really good in that. And they were like, "We like you. Do you have any ideas you want to do?" And like, so they respect the creators and they
And then something like Barry comes out of that, which is
yeah.
just amazing.
I mean, HBO is still under Warner, which is still under like
Warner
Zaslav. So I'm
Brothers
not trying to
Discovery.
say
Yeah.
yeah. So like, but it just gives more point of like why the writers are
Yeah,
important and the
but
writers are
still,
very
it's
important.
interesting because like they just have this way of tapping into just the culture. Like
hmm
you look back however many years. Okay, let's start not too long ago. Let's say from because obviously there was amazing stuff before then that was kind of like culture defining, so to speak. But there was the Sopranos that everybody was talking about. Then the
hmm
Sopranos ends. What comes next? Game of Thrones, and then everybody's talking about that
Or
for
The
the next
Wire, but
decade,
yeah, The
and The
Wire and
Wire
Game of
as well.
Thrones.
Yeah, yeah, The Wire and Game of Thrones, and then Game of Thrones ends, and then Succession starts, and that just becomes like this thing that has now like taken things. Now that Succession is ending, I'm curious. I wonder what HBO has next that they think might be the next, placeholder that basically is the flagship for their studio. Like
Yeah,
when
I
when
mean,
when Game of Thrones ended, I wondered if it would be Westworld.
well, it was meant to be Westworld. It
But
was
then
also Westworld for 1 year,
yeah,
and
but then
like,
Succession came along very quietly. But look what it became.
yeah, I mean, like they have White Lotus, and obviously that can always change as much as you want and stuff like that. I think, like,
Yeah,
I think it just goes down to like respecting your talent and respecting
yeah.
smart creators, and like, oh, this is not, I don't want this is I'm about to go into an anti, but you can make shows by algorithm. You just can't. You can make some shows and make people happy, but you can't make shows that would mean stuff. Like I'm not trying to go on a pretentious rant, but like that's just how it is. Like
Mm.
y- y- there's a there's a scene in Barry where they're talking about it's kind of like a Netflix version of their stream and they're like, yeah, our data shows us that like shows that shows that do well are shows that mention a dessert in the first 10 minutes and have probably someone like Dev Patel in the first scene and everything like that. And
Dev
those are
Patel.
yeah, those are the shows that do well on the platform. And it's like that's like very algorithm based, and like that can only last so long. Well, I don't know. Just
Mm.
WG is strong, right? Just focus and support creative people, and that's what HBO does. And put that's what HBO does.
Yeah, HBO specifically.
HBO. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good point to end it.
Yeah, for
Pushing
sure.
all the by the time I'm recording, by the time this is coming out, the SAG, the Screen Actors Guild might be on strike as well. Well, I don't know.
Well, that'll be fun, I guess.
Yeah, just DJ to follow. But anyway, thank you, Rebecca, for coming back. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you everyone that sent questions. Everyone on YouTube that comments. Thank you
Shout
very
out.
much. Shout out to all of you. And yeah, join us next week when we'll be joined by Daniel Kaluuya. Yeah, from Ruby and I, one final time to you guys, just fuck off.